Okay, good morning. Diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplaces and communities flourish. They lift us up, and we are all enriched by such actions. Pursuing equity is good for all of us. Pursuing equity is good for business. And this is why business must play a pivotal role in working towards meaningful progress in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So good morning again. I am Kristen Collette-Schmidt, the Associate Dean for Specialized Master's Programs here in the Mendoza College of Business and competition organizer. Welcome to the final round and closing reception for the 2022 Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Grow the Good in Business case competition. So the primary objective of this academic initiative is to connect Mendoza students with local business leaders who are committed to equity and inclusion in the workplace. Through the case competition, students work to propose solutions to a business challenge related to DE&I. Along the way, they will use the business acumen developed while in Mendoza, showcase their leadership, problem-solving, and teamwork skills, collaborate across multiple disciplines, and learn the value of creating an inclusive environment that promotes mutual advancement. The opportunities and challenges in the DE&I space are complex and multifaceted. The annual DE&I Grow the Good in Business case competition will allow us to address many of them year after year and as they evolve into the future. And for this, our inaugural year, we are pleased to collaborate with the state of Indiana to address one aspect related to a much broader topic of DE&I. And that topic is the disproportionate impact of socioeconomic challenges on communities across Indiana. During 2 rounds of competition over 2 months, students have been working to develop business solutions to the racial wealth gap across 3 regions in Indiana that will be shared with the state of Indiana for their possible use. And today, you will hear the innovative proposals of the 3 specialized master's teams who made it to the final round. On this final day of competition, I could personally say that I am incredibly proud to have had the honor of working with every single one of you, the students, through this case competition. And the value of this academic experience to the students, to the state of Indiana, to Mendoza, to our various workplaces and communities is now as clear as it's ever been. So now let's listen to a message from Indiana's own Governor Eric Holcomb on his view of the value of the DE&I Grow the Good in Business case competition.
Hello, I'm Governor Eric Holcomb, and it's indeed an honor to join you, virtually I know, for the Grow the Good in Business closing reception. You know, my college days are long behind me, but the values and lessons I learned there prepared me well for this unique opportunity to now make our state a better place. And I couldn't be more thrilled that you've chosen to hone your skills here at Notre Dame. You're already putting your entrepreneurial talents to work right here and proving just how serious you are about being force multipliers and improving the lives of your neighbors and this wide world around you. Because it's one thing to talk about the problems we face, and of course, there's merit in that. We need to talk and listen. But it's game changers like you who dare to go beyond the dreaming, beyond the talking, and develop real world plans for the real world challenges we all face and win at the end of the day. And even more importantly, you bring about solutions and open doors of opportunity that everyone can walk through. Alongside you, That's our shared mission as well. Erasing lines and busting down those barriers and ensuring every Hoosier in every rural, urban, and suburban community in Indiana can grow and thrive, both personally and professionally. And that's precisely why I appointed our state's first ever Chief Equity, Inclusion, and Opportunity Officer. And as you've seen firsthand, Kara and her dynamic team are, yes, energetic, but they are also very focused on ensuring equity in your state government and the services you entrust us to provide are getting through. They're working with stakeholders all across our state and making great strides. So Indiana becomes known as a leader on this front. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for working with them, with us, to do just that. Talk, listen, and do. And if I may, just one more thing, wherever your future takes you, and I hope it's in the many thrilling and fulfilling careers and vibrant communities available to you, something you're passionate about. I hope it's here in Indiana. I just can't wait to see how you'll continue to grow the good. You've earned this reception. Now enjoy it.
So in his message, Governor Holcomb mentioned Kara and her committed team. And that, of course, is in reference to the trailblazing work of the Office of the Chief Equity, Inclusion, and Opportunity Officer. Indiana's CEIOO has been a tremendous partner throughout this inaugural case competition, including as the primary author of the case. So now I am excited for you to hear from her yourself.
Good morning. Oh, you can do better than that. Good morning. Hello, coffee. It's so good to see all of you. I'm excited to be here. We have been working incredibly hard over the last couple of months. My deputy chief, Anthony Phillips, wave your hand, is the one that's been here talking with some of you. I have another one of my deputy chiefs in the room with us, Joseph Pinnell. He's back there, wave your hand. And we are just so thrilled to present some information today to let you know how you all are helping us do the work that Governor Holcomb just talked about. I'm not sure how to switch to the different screen because this is a foreign space to me, but we are working tirelessly. And one of the things that was really important to me when I came into this position was that we made sure the foundation of this work was data-driven and evidence-based. And so when Joan, I don't know where Joan is, when she reached out to me and said, how can we partner on this? Initially, we were thinking about dollars and trying to figure out how much money the state could give. And then I thought about something much more invaluable. I said, how about I take you all's intellectual capital? That's what would really help us in these early phases of the work. So, as the governor mentioned, he created this new initiative, the Office of the Chief Equity, Inclusion, and Opportunity Officer for the state. We're looking at equity, inclusion, and opportunity through a couple different ways. And Deputy Chief Phillips talked about this a little bit. But number one, we have 30,000 employees in the executive branch of Indiana state government. And so our team is working to create a more inclusive culture where all of our employees have strong career growth and they can contribute better to the communities in which they live across the state. But number two, which is how you all are helping us, we're looking at how we remove barriers to access to people experiencing a better quality of life, making sure that all Hoosiers, urban, rural, suburban, have access to the tools necessary to take their families and their communities to the next level. When Governor Holcomb created this position thank you so much, in 2020, I was contacted about having a conversation with him about what this would look like. And when we sat down and started talking about this work, I got incredibly motivated. I'm not a diversity, equity, and inclusion expert. That's not my background. I actually worked here at the University of Notre Dame for nearly a decade in workplace compliance, and then I was the director of public affairs. The diversity experts like Eric Love, who's in the room, and Joseph Pinnell, my deputy chief, and Eve Kelly, they are doing that great work. But what motivated me was the opportunity to impact the lives of 6.73 million Hoosiers, all of whom are my bosses. I work for the people of the state. And so we started talking about some things that we'd be able to implement. And the first thing I did was I said, I have to hire a world-class team. So we have Connie Hudson, who's the executive assistant and office manager, Joseph Pinnell, who's back there working on our internal workplace culture to better support our employees, Anthony Phillips, who you all have met through this case competition because he and I drafted the case that you worked through, and then Josie Fasselt, who's our Chief Data and Strategy Officer, because as I mentioned, everything needs to be evidence-based and data-driven. And so we've been fast at work, and there are 6 overarching goals that I want to share with you that I am working with the team to implement over the next 2 years. And this is where your work that you've done on this case competition is going to be incredibly helpful for us. Number 1, because this is a new initiative, we want to make sure that it's sustainable. So we're working very hard to integrate this work into every aspect of Indiana state government. We have close to 100 state agencies, so we're spending time with all of those leaders of those agencies to figure out how we help them keep an equity lens on the work. One of our key partners is the Department of Education and Secretary Katie Jenner. So our second goal is related to education, working with the Secretary of Education and Dr. Katie Jenner to look at achievement gaps, learning loss, and literacy rates in the K-12 education space to work with external and internal partners to start to close those achievement gaps for our most vulnerable students. Some of those students include Black and Brown students, Hispanic students whose Spanish is their first language, students with disabilities, and students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. So we're working really closely with them, and they actually just gave us a $1 million grant to partner with them on this work. Number 3, our third goal, and I just mentioned this before, this is to make sure that we're building a strong data infrastructure. My office is operating under an executive order, and as a lawyer, I told the governor, I said, we have to get this codified into legislative statute. And so in order to do that, before I get in front of all of the legislators, I have to be able to make that case. And so the data, the evidence, making sure we're tracking the work and showing the metrics that we're trying to get to will help us get this work codified. And so the sustainability of the work is incredibly important via our data infrastructure. Number 4, business. And this is what I'm so excited about because the content that you all have shared with us is going to help us. Indiana has a fantastic economy, but we're hoping to drive more entrepreneurship from diverse business owners. So one of our big goals is we're going to highlight 25 small businesses across the state to show how they work with the Indiana Economic Development Corporation and our small business development centers to really thrive. We're hoping that these video profiles, photo profiles, and short stories will encourage more women and people of color and veterans to dig into that entrepreneurial spirit and contribute to the economy in a new way. And you all have given us some good content that will be able to interweave into that. Number 5, and this is probably where the case competition will have the most impact. My deputy chief, Anthony Phillips, is going to be working with anchor institutions and big business across the state to look at how we reimagine our strategically focused corporate social responsibility to quickly move the needle on inequities that exist by region in this state. And so because we separated the case competition into the northern, the central, and the southern region, we're really excited to dig into some of the content that you all created and share some of that with CEOs, college and university presidents, hospital directors, to sit down and say, in your region, this is what the social determinants of health look like. This is how people are experiencing quality of life. Here are the opportunities to drive those numbers in a different direction. And so your case competition responses are going to help us articulate some of that for those business leaders. And then our final goal, and I mentioned it when I talked about the data, is to make sure that in 2023, we get the work of this office and our team in front of our legislature to ensure that this is codified into legislative statute. I will leave when my boss leaves, right? I came to work for the governor. I'm a political appointee. Anthony's always like, don't say that, don't leave us. But I'm gonna go on to the next thing. But this work needs to be sustained. And so today, on behalf of my team and our office, and on behalf of the great governor, the 51st governor of the state of Indiana, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for your work in this case competition. And please know that it was not in vain. We are excited to dig into it and utilize it for the state of Indiana. God bless and go Irish.
On behalf of the Specialized Master's Program, we want to thank Kara and the Office of the Chief Equity, Inclusion, and Opportunity Office. Thank you for the opportunity to do this competition, but also for the work you do for the state of Indiana.
Thanks, students, and thank you, Kara. Once a domer, always a domer. We're very happy to welcome you back under the dome. Thanks for being with us today and all your support throughout the event. My name is Jessica McManus-Warnell, and I'm a teaching professor in our Department of Management and Organization here at Mendoza. And I have the privilege of supporting the competition this year. It's been a real joy to work with our students for the past couple of months, and certainly with my wonderful colleagues across the college. So our event today is the culmination of several months of activity. Back in February, when we launched the competition, students had an opportunity to hear from local business leaders, community leaders, on these topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and their critical importance for leading successful organizations and successful communities. So they started formulating their ideas. They've now undergone 2 rounds of competition, and these rounds have been judged by a panel of wonderful experts, faculty, staff, MBA students, alumni from across the university and beyond. They also had opportunities to dig into their learning a bit more through some workshops. So we offered workshops on inclusive ethical leadership, on poverty and social justice, and we've envisioned this as a learning opportunity for our students and also for them to contribute to the community. They're a part of this community. And so all the work that they produce for the competition will be shared with our partners at the state of Indiana, and we hope that it can be useful in their own leadership. So what I'd like to do is start us off recognizing our top 10 teams. So they're all seated here in the front. If you guys could stand up and be recognized, that would be great. Good work. We are so excited to see all of you make your mark as leaders in this space. I'm very pleased now to be able to present to you the top 3 finalist teams. So I'll call the teams up to the stage, please. Why don't you join me up here, and then I'll introduce you your name by name, please. Great. And maybe as your team is announced, you could step forward, please, okay? So our first team, and all of these students on this first team are in our Master of Nonprofit Administration program. We have Courtney Crochell. We have Patrick Starner. And we have Reagan Ward. Thank you. Great. Our second team, which is all from our Master of Science in Management program, Caitlin Deerfield, Maya Dodson, and Maria Shore. Great, thank you. Our third team, Suyash Gupta, Sully Noor, who are both from our Master of Business in Analytics program, and then Nathan Simon and Nimoy Vajja, who are both from our Nonprofit Administration program. Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, you guys have a couple minutes to prepare yourselves, and we look forward to hearing from you very soon, okay? Good luck. All right, great. So the plan is that we will hear from each team. The plan is to hear an 8-minute presentation from each team, followed by 4 minutes of Q&A from our panel of judges, okay? And I'm very privileged to be able to introduce this panel, who is, the linchpin pulling this all together as we wrap up the competition. We have a wonderful panel representing industry and academia, and I'd like to invite them to please introduce themselves at this time.
Well, I think most of the students here already know me. I was here before. I'm Anthony Phillips, Deputy Chief in the Office of the Chief Equity, Inclusion, and Opportunity Officer. Among my first couple of weeks in the office, I told Chief Officer Herring that if she ever is in a place where she speaks, I don't want to follow it.
Yeah. I know, thank you.
And here I find myself again trying to follow that, but thank you so much. I get the pleasure of being a Deputy Chief in this office. I get the pleasure of doing this work. I'm the external focus guy, so I get the pleasure of coming to campuses like Notre Dame and Purdue and all around the state of Indiana just to see the different Indiana faces, the different Indiana businesses. This work means a lot to me. I think I made that clear when I was here speaking to you guys a few weeks ago. It means a lot to the state of Indiana. Thank you all profusely for the work that you're doing. Thank you all profusely for the work that you've done. This is all stuff that's going to be huge for the future of Indiana, and I hope that it's a future that you all are involved in. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Shelly Alexander. I'm the Central Region President for First Source Bank. I graduated about 2 years ago from the EMBA program and had Kristen, I'm not sure where she went, as one of my professors. Fantastic experience. Love all the experiences I had on campus. But one of the things, that First Source is really dedicated to DE&I within our organization, it not only brings a diverse set of values, ideas, and individuals into our organization, but then it allows us to be a better representation of the communities that we serve. Just lost my train of thought. We have learned through our clients that they like to bank with people that look like them and share their values, and that's why it's important to First Source.
Good morning, everyone. How y'all doing? I feel like we can do better than that, right? Right? We're gonna do that? Okay. No, thank you all for being here this morning. My name is JP Abercrombie. I'm the Executive Associate Athletic Director for Culture and Engagement with Notre Dame Athletics. Yes, that is a long title. If you have any ideas of what that means, thank you for being thought partners in that space. But for the Cliff Notes version, I oversee all of our organizational culture, diversity, equity, inclusion, and strategic initiatives out of the athletic director's office. So I get to work with a variety of stakeholders in higher ed, through sport, and in surrounding communities, both locally and globally. It's never a dull moment in my world. And I want to thank all of you for the work that you have put into this space so far, and this process so far, because I think the focus on our people is something that we as a country might have gotten away from for a while, and you're helping to recenter that. You're helping to refocus us on our people and ensuring that they all may thrive. While I'm new to Notre Dame, I'm not new to this work, and I'm not new to the plight that many of you may face as students in this part of the country, in this region. Indiana and Illinois have been a huge part of my upbringing, so it's fruitful for me to be able to come back home and ensure that I can pay it forward where others may be able to thrive too. This is not just hard work, it is also heart work. And I look forward to the contributions that many of you will continue to make beyond this competition, so we can ensure that others not only have access to opportunities, but they are truly accessible to them. So thank you for doing that work.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Zoe Thompson, and I am with KPMG. I'm actually from Texas, so this was a really surprise to open the door and see snow. So fortunately, I looked ahead and brought a coat. I've had it for about 20 years. I don't wear a lot of coats in Houston, so thank you very much for the very warm welcome, no pun intended. I am representing KPMG, and diversity, equity, inclusion is incredibly important to us for two reasons. So one, as a firm, we're committed to our own employees. That diversity, equity, and inclusion is part of our business strategy. How do we become the most desired place to work for people from underrepresented communities so that they can get here, succeed here, and lead here? It was a huge tenet of our CEO when he came in and said, this is going to be who we are. It's part of our heritage, but now it's part of our strategy as well. Secondly, I also lead our social strategy component at KPMG, and I'm the co-lead for our diversity, equity, and inclusion practice, which means I work with businesses, organizations, and governments to help them not only drive more diversity in their workforce, but also more impact in their communities. That includes health equity, that includes supplier diversity, that includes all of those components, because fortunately we are in a time in our society where people understand it's not just the right thing to do, but it's really good for business. So I'm very excited to be with you. I loved reading about the cases, so thank you again for having me, and look forward to the presentations.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Brett Beasley, and I am the Associate Director of the Notre Dame Deloitte Center for Ethical Leadership. And if you want to connect with us, it's really easy to do. We are just right here across the atrium. So you can find all of our resources, which are all free and all aimed at helping inform, equip, and inspire ethical leaders. And inclusion matters a lot to our center. What we have been hearing in recent years, and I think what is affirmed for me in all of the amazing work we have seen from all of these students, is that inclusion is no longer just an aspect of ethical leadership. It's really at the core of any ethical initiative that a leader would want to take on. You cannot solve a problem like climate change, even, for example, or address a problem like fake news and disinformation that may not seem connected to inclusion, but these problems are so complex, so multifaceted, that an inclusive approach is going to be required. These problems are what our colleague Wendy Angst, who teaches design thinking, would probably call wicked problems. So to be able to address this, you have to be the kind of person who can amplify voices that have not been heard before, that can include stakeholders that haven't been heard before. So it's been encouraging for me, working with the students, to see tremendous empathy on the part of all these students, to see themselves in solidarity with people they may not have seen themselves in solidarity with before. But not just to stop at compassion, but to bring tremendous business acumen and all of their creativity to really work alongside and fight for a better future for everyone. So that's what I've seen working with the students, and I know that's what we're going to see on the stage today. So we're excited for it.
Good morning. My name is Bethany Hartley. I'm with the South Bend Elkhart Regional Partnership. I get to serve as their Chief Strategy Officer, and we are very grateful to be a part of this program. For those that aren't familiar with our organization, take what Kara said and put it at the regional level. That's what we're focused on. We want to eliminate the racial wealth divide here in the South Bend Elkhart region. We have 725 wonderful residents that we want to make this a place where they want to live, work, and play. And we are so grateful. Joan got a shout out already. She serves on our DEI committee, as does Shelly, and we are grateful for the opportunity to work with Notre Dame. We actually are also working with the masters. I heard a couple of the students are with the Masters of Science in Data Analytics, because we are also wanting to be evidence-based in the work that we're doing. So they're doing a capstone project for us at the same time. So we're excited to see the outcomes of that as well. So we just thank you for the opportunity, and we're really looking forward to the information that we're going to learn today. Thank you.
I would say saving the best for last, but that's definitely not true with these guys. All these people are super impressive. My name is Harold Swanigan. I am the Assistant AD of the Gold Center. I actually worked in basketball for the last 10, 11 years as the Director of Basketball Operations, but for the last year, the last few years, I've been on the committee for diversity and inclusion in the athletic department, and one of the things that we always talk about is retention and development of people of color. And as you know, in athletics, in the major sports, most of those kids are people of color that really generate revenue for the athletic department, but it's underrepresented in the athletic department at the administration level. And I think it's important to be able to see people that look like you in those positions. That's not always the case. And one of the things that we're trying to do in athletics by bringing in JP and people of color, but also super smart people in different ways of thinking, I think that is the biggest thing, the diverse thinking in a space that can sometimes get stale. And I'm excited to be a part of this, to see what people have, and then hopefully move forward with it on the state level. So it's not always about what you see and what you do. It's not putting lip service to it. It's actually doing. And I think this is a great opportunity. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much to our wonderful panel of judges who have also kindly offered to make themselves available for a brief networking session immediately following the competition events today. So we encourage the students to take advantage of this opportunity to engage with these wonderful folks. So now it's time for the featured event, right? So what we'll do again is hear from each team. we'd like to ask if you just hold applause in between so we can keep the teams kind of rolling along. After we hear from each team, the judges will take a few moments to leave and deliberate, and while they do that, we have the good fortune of hearing our keynote address. So at this point, I'll turn it over to our first student team. Thanks. Good luck. Great.
Good morning, Notre Dame community. Good morning, distinguished judges. We are so excited to share with you our solution to the 2022 Grow the Good in Business case competition. We are Team Elios. Elios was a Greek goddess that personified kindness, mercy, and compassion. We also believe these three characteristics to be at the heart of when Mendoza calls its students to grow the good in business. My name is Courtney Crochell. I studied at St. Mary's College for undergraduate, majoring in economics, and I'm a current M&A student along with my two peers.
I'm Reagan Ward. I studied political science here at Notre Dame in undergrad.
And my name is Patrick Starner, and I studied theater and accounting here at undergrad.
Now, being an economics major, of course, I had to start this presentation with some data. So we were tasked with finding a solution for the Central Region. Although it may not look like it from this first graph, the Central Region is the most racially diverse in the state. However, when you look at the second graph, you can see that median income amongst gender, race, and ethnicity varies greatly. First of all, women are consistently paid less than their male counterparts. However, race is also important, and there's pertinent gaps there as well. And today, as we address the racial wealth gap, it is important to keep in mind that income is an important factor. However, it is not the only factor. Now I'll hand it over to Patrick to speak more about this topic.
Thank you, Courtney. Now, we have identified 9 primary drivers of the racial wealth gap, which range everywhere from loan access to education disparities. However, all of these issues vary in complexity and aren't necessarily the easiest to address within a short time frame. Therefore, we have chosen to focus on the 6 factors, the 6 drivers, which we believe are the quickest and the most efficient to solve. These are personal biases, education disparities, health, transportation, and childcare deserts, and wage gaps. However, even with these 6 factors, they vary drastically from region to region within Indiana, and even from community to community. Therefore, our solution is one that puts the power into the hands of the businesses to be able to choose which drivers are most important to them and their respective communities. We advocate for the creation of the Central Hoosier Pride, or CHIP certification, which would be awarded to firms which take combating the racial wealth gap into their own hands. Now, as far as how this certification would be implemented, it would first start with the CEIOO office. They will create the CHIP program, and then once it's created, they will delegate oversight of it towards the Indiana Small Business Development Centers. These small business development centers will then work directly with both local firms and their communities in order to determine which drivers are most important to them. From there, they will select from a list of chosen metrics to be able to determine success, And once those metrics are achieved, the small business development centers will then award the CHIP program to those who reach them. As far as what metrics people will have the choice to choose between, there are 2 mandatory metrics which any business seeking to obtain the CHIP program, CHIP certification, must achieve. The first of which is that the individuals that they hire, their employee demographics must match those of their respective communities. Additionally, all employees who are at the same position or same management level must be paid the same. Outside of these 2 mandatory factors, we also are allowing businesses the flexibility to choose 2 of the following 4 criteria, which encompass providing health care to employees, providing transportation reimbursement, providing maternal and paternal leave, and providing leadership development opportunities, with a particular emphasis on advancing part-time employees to full-time employees and entry-level employees to management-level employees.
Now that we have presented you with our solution breakdown, we want to show you how we will measure success. One of our adoption goals is to have 25% of small businesses in Central Indiana adopt the CHIP program. Additionally, we will have tri-yearly assessments that measure everything from employee wealth, access to healthcare, transportation, and just overall employee satisfaction. For our long-term goals, we hope to see a decreased wage gap and an increased quality of life. Now, CHIP was designed to be feasible. We know that hearts nor minds have ever been changed by force, and that's why this is a voluntary program. We want businesses to come to CHIP, not the other way around. With something as important as DE&I, we need intentions by business leaders to be authentic to grow diversity and inclusion within their communities. Second, like Patrick had mentioned, it's flexible. There are very many different combinations in which a business could use to earn a CHIP certification. This way, different businesses of all different sizes and across different industries can show their commitment to DE&I. And here's a brief 3-year timeline of our project. The first year will be spent up developing the CHIP. The second is when applications would go live for the CHIP and different businesses could begin to apply and earn the certification. And the third year would be one of evaluation. In this period, businesses, we'd see if we've met that goal of 25%. If not, kind of see where that barriers are holding us back. If so, we could pursue expansionary efforts. But regardless, at this point, all the data would be sent to the governor's office to show the positive impact CHIP has had on this region.
I know that we have thrown a lot of information at you, and you may be wondering, how can a voluntary program be successful? Well, let me introduce you to B-Lab. B-Lab is a worldwide organization that focuses on environmental stewardship and social innovation. Currently, there are over 4,800 B Corporation certified businesses in over 70 countries. Moving on to why you should choose CHIP. We believe that true change only happens when individuals and firms truly want to grow the good in business. What CHIP does is that it allows businesses to be directly involved in this change and have an authentic and dedicated interest in DE&I efforts in their communities. So moving on to rewards. One aspect of CHIP that sets it apart is that we will have rewards for businesses that participate. One such example would be the CHIP Sycamore Leaf, which would be the state tree of Indiana, and it will be awarded to businesses who truly grow above and beyond to grow the good in business. Additionally, TV commercials and billboards can be given, and continual public support from Governor Holcomb can be provided. Finally, monetary rewards from venture capitalists can be provided to those who truly do meet the CHIP qualifications.
Now, as M&A, Mendoza, and Notre Dame students, we truly believe in growing the good in business, and our solution does just that. It acknowledges the rights of all humans to have fair living conditions and the ability to support themselves. It acknowledges human dignity in that our program isn't a handout. It is a tool that is used to empower businesses to take control over the racial wealth gap and to promote good within their respective communities. And then lastly, it utilizes the subsidiary principles from Catholic social teaching in that it empowers businesses, again, to tailor their approach to closing the racial wealth gap, specifically to the needs of their people, their employees, and their peers. So, thank you, distinguished judges, Notre Dame faculty, other top 10 teams, and everyone who is here to listen to this for your time and your consideration. And just as a reminder, when Indiana chips in, we all win.
Hello, nice job. It was a great presentation. So we have a joint question for you. How is it funded? How do you pay to do this program?
That is an excellent question. For a lot of this, in terms of like feasibility, we're trying to do this program with as low cost as possible, and really encouraging businesses that use their own tools and their assets to be able to make these D&I efforts. As Reagan mentioned, a part of this program is the hope that the CEIO office and small business development centers will be able to coordinate with venture capitalists or like banks in the area as well to provide additional loans to maybe smaller businesses who don't have the money in-house to necessarily implement these opportunities. So just leveraging connections to be able to connect firms with those who may have more of the resources to be able to support them.
Okay, I have another question since I still have the mic. Why the ISBDCs as the partner across the state for implementation?
So, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yes, I can. Why the Indiana Small Business Development Centers as the implementation partner for the CHIP program?
I can take this one. So these development centers are already in the regions. They're already working with local businesses. They have those established connections, and kind of having that trust partner. Local businesses go to them to help develop. And just having the CHIP certifications there, them informing them, using it as like a platform to like market the CHIP certification. We think that's a great resource, and they're already in place amongst the central region. Helps with funding, helps cut down the cost.
Can you hear me? So great presentation, enjoyed that very much. Question for you about sharing of best practices. So what mechanisms are there for the different small businesses to share information across what's worked well based on a particular industry or a particular size of company? Anything in the structure for that?
Yeah, well, again, small business development centers, they're a resource for these local businesses. So again, we can't force businesses to share their best practices, but we hope this will be a collaborative event because DE&I affects all of us, and hopefully businesses will be able to recognize that as well and work together.
Yeah, just to jump off of that, the small business development centers within this plan, they aren't just like an upper level manager overseeing everything. The idea is that they would be boots on the ground and having active conversations between the firms and the communities in and of themselves. And through those conversations, while you might not necessarily be able to make firms share information, you can, the small business centers, as ones who are having these conversations between 4, 5, 6, 20, 30 different firms, can then learn from each of them and then impart their wisdom to other firms as well.
Thank you so much for your presentation and the ending slogan. What assistance or accommodations do you anticipate needing to assist the businesses in meeting your mandatory criteria?
Well, part of our goal breakdown is that it is flexible, and if they're unable to meet some of those, we could potentially add more so that they could be better tailored to the businesses and what they're able to do or not do.
Okay, thanks so much. I'm really intrigued by the connection to B Corps. And I wanted to ask, to what degree would this kind of certification have accountability? Would you be checking up? Would it be possible to lose this certification as is possible with B Corp status, that kind of thing?
Yes, so that was part of the main idea behind our tri-yearly assessments. So if employees aren't meeting like certain standards within those assessments, then a business could potentially lose it and then either go into probation time or just not be able to earn it again.
I have to check it. Well, we were just talking about this earlier. This is the generation of, sorry, I was on mute. So, question for you about the financial incentive for a business to become CHIP certified. You mentioned there was a possibility for maybe stipends through venture capitalists or things like that, and maybe some marketing dollars that are given by maybe small business development centers, maybe CEIOO. But I'm thinking about that the second requirement that was mandatory, in which all staff at a certain position has to make the same. What if the financial benefit that they get from just those stipends and the marketing doesn't equal the financial constraint of bringing those people who, are in a position but aren't quite making as much as someone else, bringing all the people up to that? Because I don't think they're going to take someone's salary and reduce it. That person will leave. And the people below are going to be like, well, I don't want you to come down to me. I'd like to go up to there because that's what that position's worth. So what if the financial burden of meeting that salary requirement exceeds for them in their analysis the financial incentive of becoming CHIP certified? Have you guys done any analysis into maybe some of the other less tangible but still financial benefits that may affect the company and make it profitable? Because it does come down to profit at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
So unfortunately, with the time frame of the competition, we haven't had a chance to do a ton of extensive research in regards to that. But what I will say onto that is, as far as like the exact same pay, we don't literally mean like the exact same figure, more just within a reasonable amount, because obviously there are a number of factors which go into establishing pay level, judging from like years on staff towards like experience as well. But right now, as we all are aware, the discrepancy in the wage pay is way too large. So the focus is primarily on narrowing that down into a set standard that would be reasonable. And that's something that we very deliberately do not have a range right now because it does vary firm to firm based off of resources, positions, what they're doing. And the idea is that the small business development centers would be able to work with the firms to determine what is a reasonable range that both allows you to continue to operate, but also promotes the DEI efforts and equality. I mean, that is much needed within not just Indiana, but the country and the world as a whole.
Thank you. Best of luck, guys.
Turn off your mic before you take it off.
Start out? Yeah. Oh, I'll take this.
Hello, everyone. Today, we will be discussing our solution to decreasing the racial wealth gap in Indiana. Our focus is in central Indiana, specifically Indianapolis, as the place to start. A quick introduction. We're all MSM candidates, starting with Katie Deerfield, who studied chemistry. I'm Maya Dotson, I studied engineering and ethics, and Maria Scher, who studied chemistry as well. Also, a quick thing about our team name, Team O'Hara. It's after John O'Hara, who worked tirelessly to remove barriers for others to get a formal education that he wasn't able to get. And I think that also goes and ties into the main issue we identified, which is education. Looking at the graph, only 8% of small business owners are Black. And these low percentages are not due to a lack of ability, it's due to a lack of access to educational resources. It's important to note, though, in Indianapolis, there's a lot of educational resources available. The issue is that people are not able to utilize them. And this helped us figure out our proposed solution.
As Maya mentioned, our proposed solution is threefold. We're going to first focus on high school students, then we'll focus on continued adult education, and then finally we'll talk about minority-owned businesses. When we look at the Indianapolis public school system, the Indiana Department of Education asked high school students how prepared they felt for college or their next career. For high school students all around the state, they felt that they were about 70% prepared for the next step. But when it came to the Indianapolis public school seniors, they felt that they were only about 40% prepared. But they not only feel like they're not prepared in the classroom, but they also feel like they're not prepared when it comes to internships. Shortridge High School is a high school that's in the Indianapolis public school system. And although they say that they help connect students with internships on their website, if you actually go look at the internships tabs that they have on their website, these tabs have either been taken down or the URLs are not working anymore. So our proposed solution for high school seniors is we want to help connect these seniors with companies, and we'll do this through a week-long case competition. This will not only help these seniors see how applicable what they're learning in the classroom actually is, but it'll help connect these seniors with companies, and then if they do want to do internships in the future, they would be able to work with them. The second is offering access to industry-specific education. As Maya pointed out, it's not that the resources aren't there, it's just that they're not actually available, and I'll show you what I mean. One of these continued education courses is through the Washington Township Adult Education, and they offer education courses anywhere from a basic adult education to receiving your high school diploma, and then even for career training. And here are some of the examples of the career training courses that they offer. And they actually offer this just for $20. And these courses are not only offered through places like the Washington Township Adult Education Program, but also through universities such as Butler and IUPUI, which are in Indianapolis. But as Maya mentioned, it's not that they're not there, it's that they're not accessible. So this red dot right here shows the last stop on the red line, which is the public bus system in Indianapolis. And that black dot in the top right is where the Washington Township Adult Education is. There's no public transportation in between the last stop on the red line and the black dot. So in order to get there, you'd have to walk. And that walk is a 3.3-mile walk. Likewise, if you use the red line and get off at the last stop on the red line and walk to, let's say, Butler, that's over a 1-mile walk. But this walk isn't an easy walk. The sidewalks are really narrow and it's right next to the road. And to ask somebody to sacrifice hours of their day going to a class, and then on top of that, ask them to do an hour walk one way to class, shows that these resources aren't truly available. And that's even in ideal conditions. If you think about it, in Indianapolis in the winter, if it's 20 degrees and snowing, these sidewalks may not be paved, and therefore it wouldn't even be safe to get to these resources. So what we want to do through our proposal is we want to remove the barriers to these educational resources. We not only want to enhance the current courses being offered, but we also want to increase awareness by advertising them on the red line. When it comes to transportation in particular, we actually want to utilize the current Butler and IUPUI bus systems and include a stop on the red line to be able to take community members from the red line to the university academic buildings. And then when it comes to additional resources like the Washington Township Adult Education Program, we'd want to increase the stops on the red line. And then lastly is mentoring minority-owned businesses. There are many large corporations who either have regional or corporate headquarters in Indianapolis, such as Salesforce, Lilly, and the NCAA. Salesforce, for example, has already committed $118 million to continued adult education, and they have a program called the Education Cloud, where they work with individuals and teams to help educate them further in the technology space. Lilly, for example, prides themselves on working with diverse suppliers and then helps small businesses enter that space. And lastly, the NCAA has something called the NCAA Pathway, where they work with individuals or school systems and help individuals who currently work in athletics move to be athletic directors. But even though these resources are available, they're really difficult to find. So what we want to do is we want to pair small minority-owned businesses with these larger corporations, so then they're not only able to implement these successful solutions, but then they're also able to have access to the larger corporations network.
Now moving on to how we will define if our implementation of the recommendations were successful, we want to begin by acknowledging that our recommendations do propose challenges due to the fact that it is so future-oriented. However, we believe that our recommendations are attainable and easily implemented that will not only impact Central Indiana, but will eventually impact the entire state of Indiana. Moving on to our first metric, we want to increase the graduation rate in IPS schools. As you can see, there's a significant difference between the graduation rates in IPS schools and schools in varying districts. In addition to increasing graduation rates, we would see an increase in education levels as well, meaning there would be a decrease in students who do not attain their high school diploma and an increase of students who have college or college equivalent classes such as trade schools, and as well as, can you go back for a second? Thank you. As well as an increase in graduation rates from universities as well. Now, for business success metrics, an implementation of our recommendations would show an increase in minority-owned businesses as well as women-owned businesses, which would mean there would be more than 3,360 businesses. But in addition to the 3,360 certified businesses, there would be an increase of the utilization as well. Current utilization of minority-owned businesses is 9.1%, and women-owned business utilization is 9.5%. However, the county's utilization goals are currently at 15% and 8% for minority and women-owned businesses, respectively. And in conclusion, how does this tie back to our Mendoza goal of growing the good in business? We believe that our recommendations grow the good in business by creating resources and opportunities for all people to participate in, as well as displaying deep respect and showing honor to others' intentions to do the good in business. And finally, we believe that our recommendations not only create and sustain economic equity for the current generation, but will create it for future generations as well. Thank you, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So, you was talking about, great job, by the way. Y'all did a really good job. You're talking about barriers in getting people to the places, right, within the red line. Did you think about like partnerships with like local community centers, anything like that within the red line to be able to bring the programs there to kind of help out with that transportation issue or some of those barriers that you're talking about?
So we hadn't actually thought that far about partnering, for example, with that Washington Township Adult Education Center, like to get the buses from the red line to their specific locations. But similar to what you were thinking, we did think that that would be a great way to utilize the current bus system for the universities. So by implementing a bus system for that specific center, it could be a lot easier getting to the red line.
Nice job, all of you. That was wonderful. And I don't want to get the reputation to be the one asking this question every time, but I am going to ask it. We are talking business. Have you thought about the costs associated with your proposed solutions? The feasibility slide didn't really say much about that.
The biggest cost that we would incur, similar to this interterm week, would just be the time that businesses would be spending either with the students during the interterm week and truly educating them or showing the traditional workplace problems, or for example, with the minority, smaller-owned businesses, again, that would just be time in order to talk through their current issues or help with any training or show what the large corporations have done successfully. The biggest cost then we'd have to incur from a monetary standpoint would be the bus system that would take them from the last stop on the red line to the additional education resources. So we haven't actually thought about that cost specifically. However, I do know when we were doing our research, there was some information with regards to the Department of Transportation for Indianapolis, and it did look like there was some flexibility or at least a fund designated that may be able to be utilized to help. But I can get you more information on that one.
So really interesting presentation. Thank you for, and very comprehensive, lots of different angles there, which appreciated. Have you thought about something similar to the follow-up question, who the stakeholders would be? So if you're talking about changing bus routes or maybe changing locations, who are the customers that you have to convince that this is a good idea? And have you thought about how you would go about getting them on board?
Okay. For the bus route specifically, because that's a great question. So I know that in order to create the red line, I'm from Indianapolis, so I got to see all the construction and things like that that were going on with that. So the biggest thing there is the residents that live on the sides of the street, because it took years in order to create the currently existing red line stops. So there would have to be able to be communication to make sure that all of those community members are on the same page, that this is a good thing to do, but also, again, with like the funding question, you would have to have the capital to create additional stops because it would require some construction, but we can look further into that as well.
Thank you all for your presentation. I feel like there were a lot of good nuggets that we could take from this in a few different angles. There's one slide in particular that I think showed a map of the country, but also focusing on the states that were most supportive to minority-owned businesses. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My question for you is, how would you define, or how do you define Indiana as a supportive state for Black-owned businesses in this case? What does that look like for us to become a supportive state, and what would need to happen for us to do so?
I believe we would see this as really providing the resources available, specifically in this case to Black-owned businesses, and really showing them that we're providing these opportunities and resources, not only providing them, but giving them access to them and giving them different ways to get there, whether it be through the Red Line or later on partnering with community centers to provide transportation, just really giving them different opportunities to fully utilize the programs.
Mm-hmm. When we were thinking about this solution in particular, we knew it wouldn't be some massive proposal that we would do that would radically change the wealth gap in Indiana, but instead it was going to be a bunch of smaller things that was instead going to raise the floor. So by implementing, like working with the high school students or the continued adult education or the minority-owned businesses, that'll actually increase the will decrease the wealth gap by increasing those educational resources.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We truly appreciate your attention. We are Team Irish. We have identified 3 avenues to bridge the wealth gap in central Indiana. My name is Sully Noor. I'm joined here with my teammates Suyash, Nate, and Nimoy. While Suyash and I are pursuing a master's in business analytics, Nimoy and Nate are learning to be leaders in the nonprofit industry. We've identified 3 main issues that contribute to the wealth gap. First one, there's traditional predatory lending for small and medium-sized businesses. 80% of the small and medium-sized businesses that apply for a loan are rejected by the US banks. And the interest rate, even if they are approved, can range from 10% as high as 28%. Secondly, there's restricted access to skill-building resources and institutions like trade schools. The average cost of a trade school in Indiana is about $16,000. And the time frame can range from 1 to 2 years. But the graduation rate is only 60%. Perhaps some students just don't have the extended time to take away from work to attend these trade schools. And thirdly, there's intergenerational lag in wealth building. Some communities just haven't had the chances to accumulate wealth because of historical circumstances like slavery to accumulate wealth and pass it down to their children. We found that average middle-class Black family has about $13,000 in wealth. And if you compare that to a white average family, which has $150,000, that's 1/10 comparatively. a statistic we found, which was very interesting, because of the intergenerational gap, the average Black household headed by a college graduate accumulates less wealth than an average white family headed by a high school dropout.
Hence, to tackle these challenges, we came up with 3 solutions. Our first solution is a multidimensional lending model for small and medium-sized businesses. Currently, credit is a very single-dimensional metric. Lenders use a credit score or a guarantor support to approve or not approve a loan. We promote a model that takes in potential sales of the business, the location of the store, the potential of the business itself, the number of employees the business hires, and the liquidity of the business, the amount of cash it brings in and day out, to predict a new and more modern creditworthiness for each borrower. In conjunction to that, we want easier interest payments for these small business entrepreneurs. We want, for example, when sales are high in a month, the entrepreneur pays back a higher amount in principal back to the lender as compared to months when the sales are lower. We believe that this proposal can really enhance the approvals that business loans get currently and also increase the alignment of interest between business owners and lenders. Our second solution is an accelerated trade program coupled with student lending. Here's a hypothetical example here. Let's say a trade school program charges a student $15,000 and ends up expensing $10,000 on a particular candidate, making a profit of $5,000. In our accelerated trade program, we charge a student $12,000, expensing a lesser amount due to the lesser length of the program, and expenses of $5,000, making a bigger profit of $7,000. We believe that an accelerated trade program can increase the profitability of a trade school and also lessen the time off from work for these students. Coupled with that is modern student lending. Similar to the SMB lending we just talked about, we want a multidimensional look towards student lending as well. We want lenders to look at program rankings and reputations, the previous year's average salaries of that particular program, the industry demand, what technicians are needed in the next decade, and the semester GPA of a candidate to predict a newer creditworthiness for that student. We believe that this proposal will bring down interest rates and also loan amounts, and hence the approvals for those students, those underprivileged students, will go higher. Our final solution is a baby bond program. This policy is credited to Derek Hamilton. What a baby bond program is, for every newborn in Indiana, every kid gets a $1,000 seed fund at birth, and supplemental payments ranging from $0 up to $2,000 until the age of 18, depending on the family income. So with this plan, every kid will have an opportunity to accumulate up to $46,000 at the age of 18. And this fund can only be used for an asset-enhancing opportunity. For example, building a business, buying a home, or paying for a university education. We believe that this race-neutral policy will really have an impact in helping bridging the wealth gap between the Black and white millennials that currently exists.
So in terms of metrics for all 3 methods that we have, when we're looking at the lending practices for SMBs, we're going to be looking at the comparative growth and percentage of both the SMBs before we implement our program and then afterward as well. Moreover, when it comes to trade school and student lending, we're going to look specifically at the average income of graduates from our accelerated trade schools versus the traditional trade schools, and also see how the accumulated income changes in between those 2 programs over time. Finally, with the baby bond program, we're going to look specifically at the share of wealth held by the top 10% of people in Indiana, and then also look at how the decrease in the wealth gap happens between the median Black and white families in Indiana. In terms of feasibility of our 3 solutions, when we look at the multidimensional lending for SMBs and individuals, there are already companies out there that have been implementing that in their programs, one of them being Square, which is used with a lot of small businesses. Moreover, when it comes to skill-based accelerated programs for degrees, we already know that there are programs in other areas such as nursing, so that idea as well would not be difficult to transfer to the trade schools. Finally, when it comes to the baby bond program in Indiana, we calculated with the current birth rate that Gradually, as we implement the program, it'll be about a $1.1 billion annual expense over time. However, when you compare that to the 2021 budget of Indiana of $44.7 billion, that is quite small in comparison.
Taking the perspective of Catholic social teaching, to quote the founder of Mendoza, John Francis O'Hara, the primary function of commerce is service to mankind. Our solutions will empower racial ethnic minorities to finally gain financial independence. We believe our solutions are unique because they are not just tailored to tackle just to put a temporary bandage on the racial wealth gap. They are designed to bring about long-term systemic social change. Our first, multidimensional lending. We will be stabilizing economic volatility as well as bring about equitable growth for these entrepreneurs who are taking on these new endeavors. Accelerated trade schools. We will be targeting the majority of students who will be exiting high school but not attending college immediately. Our programs will help these individuals save money, but also help them become career ready in a shorter period of calendar time. And finally, our baby bond programs will bridge the wealth gap organically, allowing ethnic minorities to have the same starting point as their white counterparts by the age of 18. Thank you for the opportunity to present our recommendations. We appreciate your time, and we're excited to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Great ideas. So you're going to get the banker in the room to ask the questions now. Couple of questions. The interest rates that you quoted of the 10 to 28%, was that from a traditional bank or was that from a different source, like a credit card or things like that? Because that seems fairly high.
That is from actually a traditional bank. Because rejections are so high, as you can see, 80% for small banks, they usually take these loans as highly risky because you're a first-time entrepreneur who hasn't had any experience building a business. That's why these rates are comparatively higher.
Another question I had was on the credit scoring. Did you take into consideration what banks use for credit scoring today, how yours differs, and then could you estimate how many more businesses would qualify with your credit scoring versus traditional?
We don't have a metric to actually quantify that specific thing, but we have seen Square is actually a business that is currently running in the United States. They have higher approvals for these loans. They're funding more women-based entrepreneurs and more minority-based entrepreneurs. And there are statistics out there, I don't have them on top of my mind, that reflect that they're able to provide better funding options for these small businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your presentation. I'm a data-focused guy, so I really liked all of the data that you included in it. A few questions, some for clarification and just some because we have to do this. The clarifying question. Actually, no, this one's not clarifying. This one's a real one. For the accelerated trade program, if you're taking a trade program from, say, 2 years down to 1 and then cutting that cost in half, what goes? What in that trade program gets cut? And can we ensure that the students in that trade program are still prepared adequately for the industry that they're preparing for?
I can start the answer and I'll let my colleagues chime in on it. When you bring down, like Mendoza has a program, Mendoza has a 2-year MBA and Mendoza also has a 1-year MBA. The 2-year MBA costs about $120,000 and a 1-year MBA costs about $80,000 to every student. The potential employment opportunities for both the programs are majorly similar. I'm sorry, can you just repeat your question so that I do?
So, like in that example, what did Mendoza change between the 2 programs, and how would that translate into cutting down a trade program's time?
Right, apologies for that. When you reduce the time of a program, you reduce a lot of administrative costs and rental costs. For example, a program would have to rent a building for half the amount of time as compared to the original 1-year length program in a 6-month program. When you take administrative costs into consideration, when you have a bigger cohort that is in an extended period, for example, the 2-year MBA here, people are taking classes consecutively, and their higher administrative cost goes into that to manage those schedules. And to the last question about will these people have less training? No, they will have a concentrated training. For example, nursing program in the University of Indiana, They have a 2-year program and they have an accelerated 1-year program in which they concentrate all the classes in the smaller time period. It's a little bit more burden for a student, but those are smaller classes, really focused, and that's how they work the solution.
Thank you. And then one second question, I'm sorry, team. About the baby bonds program, and this one's clarifying. Is it that every baby born in Indiana gets $1,000? Is that how I understand it? Or were there specific babies that get it and specific babies that don't? Specific babies that get less and specific babies that get more? Could you just clarify that for me?
Right. So in the baby bond program, every kid, despite of race, gets a $1,000 seed fund at birth. But your supplemental payments range according to your family income, ranging from $0 to $2,000 per year, right? So if you have a wealthier family, you would get a lesser supplemental payment every year up until the age of 18, and that fund will only become of use at the age of 18.
And then one last question on that. You said that it was estimated about 1.something% or 1.something billion of the 40 billion. So what goes there? So when we pull a 1.1 billion from the budget, that means 1.1 billion is coming from some services already allocated to. Have you thought about what services could stand to trim their budget a bit to make room for this, the baby bonds program?
Sorry, I didn't hear parts of it. Are you asking how do you fund it, or?
Yeah. Like what of that, like that 1.1 billion that's coming out of some agencies or plural budget, like have you thought about which agencies could stand to be cut back some to make room for the baby bonds program in that $40+ billion budget?
Sure. I read a statistic. It's not an Indiana statistic, but it's national overall. The U.S. government spends $600 billion on asset-enhancing subsidies, and most of these subsidies, 70% of these subsidies, go to the top 20% earners. So we can, and overall, if we implement this program nationally, it will take about $60 billion to implement. So that's about a 10% of the $600 billion that we use for asset-enhancing subsidies in the United States. So those programs are rebates on mortgage interest payments or lower property taxes, things like that. If we resources are always scarce, and you're always taking away some to give to another. And I think that's a good source to take from, because the major benefit, the 70% of the benefit of those programs go to the top 20% earners.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very much to all of our students. And personally, I'm glad I can just observe all the teams and not have to choose a top 3 order. So at this time, our judges will retire, following Kristen here to their chambers to deliberate. And we'll just take a few minutes for them to do that. And the rest of us have the opportunity to hear our keynote presentation. So allow me to welcome our student Joey, who will introduce our speaker.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joey Park, and I'm part of the Master of Science in Management program. Today, I'm here to introduce our keynote speaker and alumnus, Mr. Tracy Graham. Mr. Tracy Graham is the founder and managing principal of Graham Allen Partnership, which is a private equity firm that specializes in investing in and building technology and technology-enhanced companies. And we're back again with him, and pleased to welcome him back under the dome. Please give him a round of applause.
All right. Here, sorry, I'm getting mic'd up. One second here. Hello. Man, this has been impressive, and I'll tell you, this is as you guys have all said earlier, it's a extremely complex topic and something that I have spent a lot of time myself thinking about. But man, I'm just so impressed with all the work of all of you. So good luck to all of you. It is truly an honor to be here with you today. I'd like to start by saying thank you to the University of Notre Dame, Dean Kremers, and the Mendoza College of Business, all the event sponsors, the state of Indiana, and Chief Officer Herring for hosting and really just allowing me to be a part of this. Joan, thank you so much. You've done, I mean, it's all of you who know Joan, give her a round of applause. Unbelievable. More than I even thought when you told me about this. So I speak to you today with a great sense of gratitude and also humility. Grateful for the opportunity to share my story, yet humbled by the magnificent work that you students have put into making a difference in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I really am. It is inspiring to hear the proposed solutions to address the wealth gap in our communities. I know all too well the barriers that most poor and minority children face in all the facets of life. Yet I also understand the pivotal moments and actions which can help to transform those lives. You see, I am the son of a single mother who never finished 8th grade and a father whom I've never met. My mother had her first child at 15 years old. By 23, she had me, her fourth and last child. I grew up in Inglewood on the south side of Chicago, a neighborhood engulfed by poverty and violence. It was the kind of neighborhood where graduating from high school was often celebrated, but not expected, where shootings were more common than studying and drugs more common than degrees. But even though I was in an environment which systematically crushed spirits and fostered hopelessness, I knew from an early age that I wanted more. So despite the tremendous peer pressure, my mother and I decided that I would not attend the underperforming public high schools available to kids from Inglewood. Instead, I applied to St. Rita High School, a Catholic school in the heart of the city of Chicago. At this point, I had no idea how much this decision would shape the rest of my life. But I had a hunch that attending St. Rita might put me in a better position to be successful. My hunch was right. St. Rita gave me a scholarship, and there I excelled both academically and athletically. I began to play football, and after some success, earned a scholarship to play for Lou Holtz here at Notre Dame. When I arrived at Notre Dame, my only aspiration was to become a professional football player. I had no thoughts of a business career and didn't associate success with any non-sports related figures. I certainly didn't know of any successful business leaders. All I had to look to was football. And there were football success stories on TV every weekend. But Notre Dame opened my eyes to a whole other kind of success. The students in my classes came from a world that I had never been exposed to, from some of America's most successful families. And at first, I felt like an outsider. Not just because I'm Black, but because financially I was different. During my freshman year, I dealt with staggering self-doubt and wondered if I belonged at Notre Dame. Thankfully, I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by a community of professors and rectors and coaches and other friends who lifted me up and made me believe that I did belong. I am forever grateful to them. Notre Dame transformed the way I thought about myself and my future. And while I'm not sure that I appreciated it then, looking back, it seemed like every day the Notre Dame experience was teaching us about faith, life, business, hard work, and values, lessons that reach far beyond football. We spent far more time preparing for the game of life than games against Michigan or USC. The environment at Notre Dame fostered a sense of unlimited possibilities, and slowly my expectations for my life began to change. I started to believe that football was not my only shot at success, and that I could be successful without ever making another tackle. Notre Dame instilled in me a burning desire to be great, a commitment to building something bigger than myself. From Notre Dame and Lou Holtz, I learned that success was possible, even for kids like me, as long as I followed the fundamental principles of a life well lived. Principles like do right, do the best you can, treat others as you'd like to be treated. These are principles learned from Lou Holtz, but that I teach my own kids and carry with me every day in life and in business. So shortly after graduation, I founded my first company with a loan from one of my closest friends, Jerome Bettis, who many of you know is on campus now, getting his degree at 50 years old, his undergraduate degree. He was a Notre Dame teammate and one of my closest friends. The first customer that trusted our company was Mike Leap from Gurley Leap Automotive here locally, a Notre Dame friend and grandparent. In 1997, in need of additional capital, I received a bank loan from First Source Bank, whose chairman and CEO is Chris Murphy, a Notre Dame alum and a gold sponsor of this event here today. Later that same year, Jay Jordan, whom this auditorium is named after, invested in me and helped me grow our business to become the largest privately held internet service provider in the country. We sold that business in 1999. In 2000, Jay and I began investing in a new business, data centers. And after growing the business, we sold it in 2007 to Cincinnati Bell for my second business exit. I remember the day the money was wired into my account. All I could think about was where I had come from. I thought back to Christmas in Chicago, 1988. I was just 15 years old. Times were harder than usual. My mother had just been laid off work. My 16-year-old sister had just given birth to a baby boy. And my entire family was living in a house with heat from a kerosene heater in one room. I replayed that memory over and over again in my mind. The scene became so clear that it felt like I was right there instantly, back in my South Side neighborhood. After some time, the reality of my new life began to sink in, and it was nearly impossible to grasp how far we had come since that cold December day. I share my story with you with the hope that you will recognize in me an example of the potential of giving minorities the opportunity to prove their value, the power of mentorship, support, access to transform the lives of people that have the desire and the will to work hard but lack the means. And this is a job for all of us. We must do all that we can to break down the social barriers that stifle inclusion and opportunity for minorities and women. To achieve lasting equity and inclusion in the business community, we must lean into man's instinct to do what is in their self-interest. We must prove that diversity and inclusion is not only the right thing to do, the good thing to do, but that it creates tremendous business value. Only then will stories like mine become not only possible, but probable. And when we do this, when we build and strengthen a robust DEI platform, when we convince businesses of the perspective and value that minorities bring to their companies, when we make the unparalleled experience that is the American dream available to all people, regardless of financial status or race. We will be enabling the Mendoza experience, the Notre Dame experience, the American experience to unleash the potential of a young man standing on a street corner on the south side of Chicago. When we refocus his energy and give him the tools and guidance that inspire him to be innovative and entrepreneurial, then we will have changed his life and made our communities better. We will have transformed a once lost individual into a person dedicated to being a force for good in the world. Thank you all for listening, and go Irish. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy, who is also, by the way, one of our trustees at the University of Notre Dame. It's an honor and privilege to have you speak today. At this time, first let me introduce myself. You've heard my name a couple of times here. My name is Joan Mclendon. I am the advisor to the Vice President of University Enterprises and Events, also a case organizer and a co-conspirator for Good Trouble at Mendoza as well. And I am privileged to introduce our Martin J. Gillian, Dean of the College of Business, Mendoza, Martin Kremers. Sorry about that, Martin.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you for a very powerful speech. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to be with you here today as we celebrate all of you, our students, our faculty and staff, our sponsors and partners, and everyone who helped out with this wonderful event today. This inaugural Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Grow the Good in Business case competition. At the Mendoza College of Business, diversity, equity, and inclusion are integral. They are an essential part of our imperative to grow the good in business. So for us as an educational institution, growing the good in business means that we aim to educate business leaders who focus on what I call the 3 C's. Okay? Contributing to human flourishing, cooperating in solidarity, and competing, yes, externally, but more importantly, internally, to the best version of themselves, with the help of God and others, so that we can create a culture where we succeed and grow together. So all the work that you've put into this case competition in these past few weeks advances this central imperative, advances our college's efforts to build a culture of inclusivity and one that welcomes and celebrates diversity. And it leads to a more equitable world. My thanks, therefore, to each and every one of you, and my congratulations on these 3 finalists, and we'll soon hear, right, also to the winners. Well done to all of you. So I have a very long list of people to thank, and I will, because of the interest of time, I will only be able to thank a more limited number of people for all of their help and support for the competition. It's a testament, again, of how important diversity, equity, and inclusion is to everyone involved, because so many people were involved. So on behalf of the college, let me start by thanking our sponsors: the State of Indiana, KPMG, the Notre Dame Deloitte Center for Ethical Leadership, the South Bend Elkhart Regional Partnership, First Source Bank, Gibson Insurance, and our strategic partner, the Fanning Center for Business Communication. Thank you, Amanda. I also want to give a special thanks to Kara Herring for authoring the case, specifically for this competition, as well as to Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb for his greetings. Thanks especially to you, Tracy Graham, a member of the university's Board of Trustees, for making time in a very busy schedule to be with us today. You have challenged us, and we're very grateful for this challenge, to make a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion very much beyond this competition as well, and to integrate this commitment into our personal and professional lives. This competition also would not have been possible without the vision of three exemplary, fantastic leaders in the college. And Joan, I still think of you as in the college. Okay? Without their vision, creative thinking, passion, and hard work, this would not have happened. So thank you, Kristen College-Smith, Joan Mclendon, and Jessica McManus-Warnell. In addition to this team of three co-organizers, the many other Mendoza faculty and staff members, MBA students, and alumni who contributed as judges, as advisors, workshop leaders, website and communication support, and many other roles. I thank you very much for your efforts to support Kristen, Joan, and Jessica, and all of our students. For the sake of time, I won't name all of you, but we will be recognizing all of the individuals at a later date. I apologize for my voice. I'm still recovering from something I got about a week ago. For now, I sincerely thank you for going above and beyond to make this competition a success. Lastly, I want to thank a very important group, our specialized master's students. We're very proud of you, and obviously without your tremendous efforts, this competition wouldn't have been the tremendous success that it is. The level of participation, the thought, creativity, and business acumen that you put into problem-solving this case, I think exemplifies Mendoza's mission to be a force for good, right? To grow the good in business. Thank you for your contributions. I'll end with a quote from one of my previous statements about how crucial it is for us at Mendoza as a Catholic business school to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion. So as a community that recognizes every person's intrinsic, inherent human dignity, it is incumbent upon us to contribute to the flourishing of each individual and to contribute to our community, recognizing our reciprocal responsibilities of supporting one another. The spirit of diversity, equity, and inclusion reflects this fundamental belief and underlies everything we do. Thank you again to all of you. God bless, and I'll ask Joan Mclendon to join me in announcing the winning teams.
Thank you again, Martin. At this time, we would like to announce the winning teams. When we call your team, can you please come up? And we would like to shake your hand and congratulate you. So at this time, I'm going to announce third place. Third place goes to Team Elos. Reagan Ward, Patrick Starner, Courtney Crochell.
That's okay.
Congratulations. In second place, we have Team Irish. Suyash Gupta, Nimoy Vayed, Sully Denor, and Nathan Simon. And since there's only one team left, congratulations to first place team, Team O'Hara. Caitlin Deerfield, Maya Dobson, Maria Shore, and Kelly Schraub, who is not here today. Congratulations to all of the winners. And this concludes our session, our actual case competitions. Thank you all for coming. There is a very light reception afterwards that you all are invited to. Again, thank you. Judges, if you can stay behind, we'd like to take some photos. Thank you again for coming.